Okay, good afternoon, ladies and excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests. Allow me to welcome you to the third panel of this conference, Shared Values and Cooperation with the Eastern Partnership countries. I'm glad you came back from the lunch. Somebody just told me that it's the first indication of the successful conference, and so we are already there. But I believe that I frankly believe that we have other indicators as well, and one of them is to have this excellent cluster of panelists that are here with me today. I'm delighted and I'm very happy to introduce, starting from my left-hand side, Her Excellency, Ms. Natalia German, Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Integration of Republic of Moldova. Thank you. Ms. Olga Stužinskaya, the founder and director of the Brussels-based Office for Democratic Belarus. Mr. Alexander Duleba, Director of Research Center of Slovak Foreign Policy Association. And as we say, last but not least, Mr. Lubomir Rehák, Political Director from this building, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and European Affairs. Okay, and before giving floor to Madam Minister, let me briefly introduce her. Graduates from the State University of Republic of Moldova and obtaining MA degree at the King's College in London. She is a career diplomat, went through various diplomatic positions, deputy head of the mission of Moldova to OSCE in Vienna, and of Moldova to NATO in Brussels, ambassador to Austria and to UN and OSCE between 2002 and 2006, ambassador to Sweden covering Norway and Finland, and then deputy minister of Moldovan Ministry of Foreign Affairs and European Integration from 2009, where she was, by the way, the chief negotiator and being in this position, negotiating also with our present Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs. Madam Minister, a few months ago, you opened an embassy, a Slovak embassy in Chisinau, and a few hours ago, you signed an agreement on ODA with our Minister of Foreign Affairs. Quite interesting dynamic of our cooperation in last few months since you became a minister. Is it a coincidence, or maybe is it your personal involvement? But what is more important, in the latest interview for Pontis, you said that Slovakia represents a genuine and distinct strategic partner for Republic of Moldova, and that you count on our father's strong support. Very kind words indeed. Could you, Madam Minister, elaborate a bit on where you see this strategic partnership from the past to the future, and what exactly you had in mind when speaking about strong support you are expecting from Slovakia? Madam Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Many thanks, distinguished moderator, for kind words and the presentation. Pleasure and honor to be back in Bratislava to address this conference that is crowning the 10 years experience of Slovak development aid all over the world, and in my part of the world and in my country in particular. Also here for the bilateral program at the invitation of Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign Minister Miroslav Lajčák, which, as you rightly pointed out, used to be my partner in the negotiating process between Republic of Moldova and the European Union on association agreement and deep and comprehensive free trade area, obviously in his previous position as managing director of the European External Action Service. But that does provide for some important background and some important cooperation platform. In his new capacity as the Foreign Minister of Slovakia, knowing each other so well and actually knowing how well Slovakia is doing, being now a very convincing member of the European Union and NATO, is an inspiration for the Republic of Moldova and for me personally. And I think that the affirmation that I made in my statement for Pontis is a reflection of exactly that sentiment. It is a conscientious choice of the Republic of Moldova to take Slovakia as an example in very many areas of our own development and of our own European integration process. And obviously not by coincidence, but the willingness and the commitment of Slovakia to select Moldova in the Eastern Partnership to become the priority destination for transfer of European experience simply met or matched with the Moldovan choice. So I can definitely say today that it is, of course, Slovakia who chose the Republic of Moldova for that very good purpose. But it is also the Republic of Moldova who chose Slovakia to serve this role model and this very purpose. And I'm very happy for this coincidence that I'm sure has excellent prospects for the future. And I'm meaning actually not only the size of both countries, the number of population, geographical proximity, because we are still in Eastern Europe region, Central and Eastern Europe to be more precise, but it is also that important element of common heritage and common historical experience that both countries share. And hence, probably it's very true, particularly nowadays, the expression of support and the expression of solidarity from the Slovak leadership and from the Slovak society that we feel and value very much in Moldova, comfortably for Moldova translated in some very practical instruments and models of support. And now that we have benefited from the Slovak assistance quite extensively for the last 3 years, today, as you rightly pointed out, Mr. Moderator, we decided to make it very sustainable and long-term based by signing together with Miroslav the bilateral agreement on development assistance structure parameters. So that will be actually bringing two countries together in the period of time 2014-2018, broadening and deepening this cooperation in very many areas. And as far as Moldova is concerned, you obviously know that we are now in the full-fledged process of the European integration. So the association agreement and deep and comprehensive free trade area with the European Union are ready, would be initialed during the forthcoming summit of the Eastern Partnership in Vilnius at the end of November this year. We are actually hoping to be able to sign the agreement as soon as possible in 2014 and start the implementation of that important agreement that reflects our absolutely voluntary commitment to reform and modernize ourselves according to the best possible model that exists for us and is very convincing, that of the European Union. This is where we think we should belong, and the membership in the European Union is an objective of Moldova's European integration effort. There is, of course, a parallel process ongoing now, which takes a lot of commitment and mobilization and effort, and this is the visa liberalization process for Moldovan citizens, which actually we are expecting a successful decision of the European Union in 2014. but it should never be perceived as a free ride for my country, because we did reform ourselves and we did meet the benchmarks and conditionalities of the process. And it will be, of course, a much more secure and stable and reformed Moldova that will be benefiting from the visa-free regime of travel for its citizens into the EU at the time when the positive decision would come for ourselves. So the reform process that is ongoing inside my country is very ambitious indeed. It's comprehensive, and it is based on the European Union model. So it is the legal approximation, it is the consolidation of the institution based on the principle of democracy, rule of law, transparency in the act of governance. It is, of course, the economic stabilization reforms and practices, and it is the comprehensive reform in the area of equality and human rights. All that, of course, is something that are areas well known to this country, to this audience, and the way the Slovak partners passed through the similar processes, the way the society was informed and mobilized about parameters of the process, seemed to us in the Republic of Moldova very relevant indeed. So the minister was speaking about stay relevant if you want to be useful, and this is exactly how we approached this cooperation between us. It is a relevant experience for my country. And the second affirmation what I heard today during the first panel was that you can never actually go and try to convince a different country, be it on this or on another continent, that what you have and what you do is absolutely applicable to the client country in this particular case. So what I want to tell you today, dear friends, is that we don't have this dilemma of this question mark in the Republic of Moldova. We consider that the Slovak example is relevant and is applicable. And here I think we have to refer also to an element of the difficulty along this way, which again makes us so similar. It was not without the setbacks that this country integrated itself into Euro-Atlantic structures, and we all know what we are talking about. We had an even longer setback of 8 years of communist rule in the Republic of Moldova, where the general feeling was that the time is wasted for the European integration effort. But then we observed how remarkably you were able to catch up with all the processes and actually overcome some of the countries were with you in the same enlargement deal. And now, of course, convincingly Slovakia is part to absolutely all European Union policies, including a member of the Eurozone. So even from this particular point of view, it's an inspiration, and the affirmation that provided that there is a good political will, there is commitment and support of the society well informed, it is doable. And so this is where we are. So what I have said about what is going on in Moldova is absolutely supported and shared by our Slovak partners. And the development cooperation that was extended to us was taking the areas of reforms that I mentioned. And since 2009 until 2013, we have benefited from the total amount of more than €1 million for a number of bigger projects that were ongoing. And we have also benefited from, I think, more than €100,000 for projects that are generally referred to as micro-grants projects implemented by the SlovakAid in Moldova. The bigger ones were referring to the modernization of the educational system in the Republic of Moldova, methodology of e-learning and flexible education. That, of course, is a part of the overall education reform in my country. Then, of course, it was the huge support to the civil society in Moldova, and I think by now we are proudly stating that more than 800 NGOs from my country benefited from the support of the SlovakAid. And of course, the beautiful model that colleagues referred to earlier today in the morning of National Convention on European Integration is something that we have embraced wholeheartedly in Moldova, because it's the template that worked here, and it's the model that should work in Moldova as well, bringing into the EU integration process a number of absolutely important stakeholders. And we will continue cooperating on that basis with the Slovak side, because it's very relevant for us. Then, of course, we had some important technical assistance to ensure the environmental standards in our general economic and development planning. And what is very important, we have also benefited from the program of experience transfer in integration and reforms. And over here, we looked into the areas of justice and home affairs. So it is the better document security, authenticity examination of travel documents, biometrical information, and many others, including the strengthening of the border guards capacity. All that proved to be very useful once we started to deliver on the visa liberalization conditionalities. And that has actually helped us to progress quite fast on that benchmarks implementation. There was also the government scholarship program that Moldova was part of, and this cooperation is ever increasing. And there was also an important cooperation between the ministries of finance that we have requested, and Slovak side responded positively. And that was about implementing the public finance reform program, better budgeting processes long term, and better and well-coordinated taxation policy. And so as far as the micro grants is concerned, that was a parallel track of Slovak development assistance to Moldova. And as I said, more than 15 projects were implemented. What was beautiful about that even if the sum of money was very small, from 5,000 to 15,000 euros, this was the money that was very easily dispatched and used for very concrete, beautiful things. And that money went to the rural communities throughout the Republic of Moldova. And that is the advantage of SlovakAid. They don't stay in the capital or in the major cities. They go to the regions. They talk to the people who are involved in the daily business, in the social, in economic, in environmental field. And the restoration of a kindergarten or an orphanage or training methods for the society of blind people from Moldova, reparation of the sport facilities for a rural school. These were the kind of projects that were implemented for the last 3 years. And they were very visible and brought the real benefit to the people immediately without a lot of bureaucracy. And then, of course, everybody understood that it is Slovakia who is helping us. And it is the Slovak experts, Slovak money, Slovak flag. And so with micro grants, you really achieved something that even bigger donors could not achieve, because they finance huge things. And it's not immediately apparent as far as the result is concerned. But where we stand right now, because of that positive experience, as I said earlier, we decided to make it bigger and broader. So we signed this agreement with Miroslav today in the morning, and that would actually increase the amount of assistance we will be receiving, and we will be able to prioritize it even better. And prioritizing for us means, of course, a coordinated policy that both countries have. Help Moldova implementing the association agreement and DCFTA, which will start next year. We share this objective. And hence, of course, two big fields that we will be doing for the next years to come. Public governance. So public governance is a huge segment which will be a continuation of reforming of the public finance, program budgeting, fiscal decentralization, and tax reform. So helping Moldova in the reform of the security sector as well. That is important. That is an important undertaking, and we are very happy that Slovakia wants to look into that reform area, which is crucial for the success of the overall process. Justice and home affairs continuously, which again we need very much. actually supporting the cooperation between government and non-governmental actors where you excel and where we still need some assistance and some methodology. But then, of course, there are some very concrete practical areas like waste management, water management, drinking water facility, water sanitation. So all those practical infrastructural even things where we want to receive continuously the assistance and it will be granted. And so we're now at the stage when we are drafting together the so-called country strategy. And again, we have received the Slovak mission in September back home, and we have identified all those areas together. It will bring this clear vision into where we are and what we want to achieve. And above all that is going on bilaterally, you also are a very active player in the Visegrad 4 Fund for assisting Eastern Partnership countries. And we know that you will be taking over the chairmanship in the Visegrad in summer 2014. Again, we already are starting to work bilaterally, and we are planning to resort to V4 Fund on education, being guided by you and introducing it into our bilateral program of cooperation as well. So to finalize, I would simply want to thank very much the Slovak colleagues for all that. We are optimistically looking into the future. I was absolutely carefully listening to the panelists from the morning session, the Western Balkans panel. That was extraordinarily insightful and interesting for me. First, of course, because the European perspective was cited by all contributors to the first panel as a driving force, as a motivational force for continuation of reforms and mobilization of societies in Western Balkan countries. And I very much congratulate you all on that. This is something that is denied to Moldova so far, by the way, by the European Union. Because European perspective, as you know, is a euphemism for a membership perspective in the Union. And if there is no consensus, so there is no offer of that particular important objective for the reform process being granted to any of the Eastern Partnership countries and to Moldova including. And for you, of course, as you rightly mentioned, there is no plan B, there is only plan A. So this is the membership in the European Union. We are still struggling to obtain the European perspective, and we understand it's not an easy task, being a country from Eastern Partnership and not Thessaloniki process. But what we have understood in the meantime, that you just have to do what you must do for your own selves and not for the European Union. Reform yourself, modernize, be compatible, be aligned, and then the time will come when it will be irresistible not to bring us in and offer us this membership perspective. And I'm grateful for Slovakia to understand these logics and to support us in doing exactly this, without pathetic statements, without declarations, but simply working together to make this reality happen on the ground, and then obtain what we think we are eligible to obtain. And there was one more thing that resonated very positively with me from the morning's discussion, is the Western Balkan countries. Some of them are in the accession negotiations process, some of them are only preparing to do it, but you are already thinking about becoming a donor for development assistance. And you have to start thinking about it early enough. You have to plan, you have to budget, you have to learn from countries like Slovakia, for example. And this is an inspiration as well. It feels very good to be on the receiving side, but I'm sure for us in Moldova it would feel one day very, very good, or even better, to be on the giving side and by your own modest effort contribute to what is important for security, stability in the European continent and beyond. And this is also one part of this importance of the conference we are attending together, because it's an experience we one day would have to share with the Slovak help. So thank you so very much.
Well, thank you, Madam Minister. First of all, for this comprehensive picture of Slovak-Moldovan cooperation, but also for bridging the first panel with this third one, because as you rightly pointed out, and as it was mentioned also in the morning, this is a logical development. It's not a coincidence that SlovakAid is moving from and refocusing from Western Balkan to Eastern Partnership. So thank you for this. I very much like what you rightly pointed out, that Moldova is going to become our program country, has been chosen by SlovakAid, but at the same time, Slovakia has been chosen by Moldova. So it sounds like a perfect match, and I hope everything would work like this in the future. Let me move to the second panelist, Ms. Olga Stužinskaya, the founder and director of the Brussels-based Office for Democratic Belarus. What is important to mention, office has been established in 2006 with a decisive support from SlovakAid and Pontis Foundation. Ms. Stužinskaya is a graduate from Maryland and Stanford University, and she served on the steering committee of the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, and is one of the founders and of the newly established international non-profit association, the Eastern Partnership Advancement Center. Well, Olga, could we go back to 2006? And could you tell us how was the ODB, the Office for Democratic Belarus, established, and maybe more important, why it was established, and being involved with SlovakAid and Slovak NGOs for a while, could you compare where we were, let's say, 7 years ago and where we are now, and what are the perspectives of this cooperation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. Before I go on with the Office for Democratic Belarus, I have to say I was a bit envious when I was listening to Madam Minister about this great match of Slovakia and Moldova, which I cannot say about my own country. But at the same time, on the level of organization, it's definitely true. We also chose Slovakia, and there has been a lot of reciprocity. Before speaking about the office, I would like, of course, thank the organizers of the event. It's a great feeling to be here among friends in first place. And also use the opportunity to thank Ambassador Rehak, who has served in Minsk representing his country and the European Union in rather difficult times. But with regard to the Office for Democratic Belarus, as Peter mentioned, it has been established back in 2006 with great assistance of the Pontis Foundation and other Slovak colleagues. I have to say I was rather young and naive in my vision how this office could work, but and it was thanks to Slovak friends that it really took shape and took off as a bridge for the reform-oriented community in Belarus and the institutions. We established new channels of communication so the information could flow both ways. Also in English language, which was an issue to receive information about the state of affairs in Belarus in English language. And of course, one of the aims was to contribute to shaping the EU policy towards Belarus back that time, so that we bring input from the field to Brussels. The office got the blessing, of course, of various political parties, democratic political parties, civil society organizations, independent media. Then in 2006, when there was the beginning of so-called short-lived, unfortunate liberalization period in Belarus, which ended in December 2010 after the presidential elections, we changed our mission because this need for information coordination was not that much there anymore. And we also realized, being in Brussels, that not much will be said in Brussels if things don't move in our country. And we saw that we, with this experience and network, we can contribute to the reform process. So we started to focus a lot on the expert exchange. We took up this sectoral approach, on capacity building for local actors, and today we run a rather very successful project which was initiated by Commissioner Füle. It's called Clearinghouse. and which has two main goals: to build capacity of local actors so that they can use the assistance which is provided by the EU and by the member states. But second, also, and this going back to the morning panel, to make sure that the needs of the local communities are reflected in donor priorities. So this serves as a channel for communication to the donor community and the European Commission in first place. We started to focus on promoting more European values in our country and encouraging people's participation in public policy, which is very much needed. We also have an EU Belarus task force, and Sonja Licht was speaking about something else this morning. But again, the idea is the same, to promote democratic reform, and this task force was also shaped with participation of Slovak colleagues. In our sectoral approach, in the sectoral cooperation, we focused very much on three areas which we identified as those where things are possible. It's transport, education, and energy. And we had very good contact and cooperation with the Slovak Energy and Innovation Agency, and we focused today a lot on the promotion of renewable energy sources in Belarus. Education is another very concrete area, and I will come back to it later. But we also, to name, we had a project with the Visegrad Fund and the European Commission, which contributed to this, and the experience of V4 countries in education reform is an important one for us. And finally, we initiated a number of sectoral analyses, also together with Slovak colleagues, to see what role civil society plays in shaping policies in different areas. I can also name such successful projects which we are not implementing, but which are run with the SlovakAid assistance. It's on corporate social responsibility. It's the first in Belarus public policy fund, which picks up great ideas from very different actors, and the support that is provided by SlovakAid to the Belarus Institute for Strategic Studies, which is a leading independent think tank in country. What is also important, that's something we have noticed over the years of implementation, the experience of countries like Slovakia and other V4 countries is much more easy often to understand for Belarusian experts than that of the old EU, due to the similarities in challenges that we were facing or approaches to problem solving. I would like also to focus more on the education, and I want to elaborate on one thing which is very popular, namely scholarships for Belarusian students to go and study abroad to receive Western education. And it's offered by a number of member states, but also it's part of the new Erasmus Plus scheme, which will be launched later this year, and where the opportunities for all Eastern Partnership countries have been expanded. We very much support this initiative, but at the same time, there is one big problem with it. We don't know how to bring these people back. There are no incentives for these young, educated Belarusians to come back and do something in the country. And this leads to the next point, that how important it is to reform the education sector in Belarus itself. Of course, the opportunities are not as wide as in other Eastern Partnership states, but nevertheless, including business education, where young people will come up, will take an innovative approach towards entrepreneurship and create new job places and support development of small and medium enterprises. Finishing on the sectoral approach, I would like to also stress we found very important to involve not only the EU experts, but also experts from other Eastern Partnership countries. For example, in the area of transport, we have cooperated very well with Moldovan experts. Moldova is a leader among Eastern Partnership states on reforms in this particular sector. Or in Georgia on higher education, where Belarusian experts could learn from the Georgian colleagues on how to implement some of the provisions of the Bologna process, while Belarus has not even joined the Bologna process. But the opportunity is there. And all this work over the past 2 years and our involvement in the Civil Society Forum has led to the Eastern Partnership Advancement Center creation, which was mentioned by Peter, and again with great Slovak participation. This is why I said that we also chose Slovakia and Slovakia chose us. And briefly for the future, if we speak about Belarus, I think it's about values. We did this recently European Values Survey as the Office for Democratic Belarus, which commissioned it with support of PACT. And the results of it has shown that despite the political course taken by this government, which goes rather the other direction, the people in Belarus very much look forward to know more about the EU, to know more about the European values, and bring them back home. And not the last thing that contributed to this is the opportunity for more Belarusians to travel to the EU, because Belarus is among the leaders of per capita recipients of Schengen visas, and we can see that it actually works. I would like to also name such points as change of mindset. This is what is important. Using space, whatever is available for incremental evolution, as we call it. For the EU and member states to be present in country more and work with very different actors, not only with civil society, but also university, business community, and so on and so on. It's about capacity building. And the last point, which I never mentioned before, is the management training, because I think there is big mismanagement on all possible levels in Belarus. And it's interesting that this concrete point was mentioned in our Stanford alumni meeting recently by Francis Fukuyama, when we spoke about the Orange Revolution in Ukraine and the post-Orange period. And that was one of the things he said. It was also due to a large extent to simple mismanagement. So sometimes I guess it's as technical as this. So to conclude on this, the democratic Belarus is not possible without strong, sustainable democratic state institutions, political parties, and civil society organizations. This is what we need to support. As for Slovakia, it can play a larger role, in my view, when it comes to donor coordination, which is not an easy task when it comes to Belarus, because most of the donors are not present in the country or cannot even access the country. So the whole process takes outside. And one of the meetings of donors implementers in Belarus took place in Bratislava this year, and it was not the only one. And in general, speaking about the Slovak support, I would like to identify these 3 I's. And Peter told me it's somewhat a new concept. He has never heard of it. But it's about innovation, inspiration, and ideas. It worked very well for my organization. And I'm sure it's true that it's not about the amount of money. It's about something else. It's about the relevance. So to conclude here, I would like to congratulate once again SlovakAid on this 10th anniversary. Thank all our friends and colleagues for this great support over the years. And wish you all the success and also our joint successes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Olga, for all those comments, but also on introducing 3 I's concept. I heard for the first time. You highlighted from what you mentioned. I would like to highlight two elements that maybe we can discuss later on. One is the multilateral dimension, because it was also mentioned by Minister Natalia German that Visegrad 4 plays an important role in both 2 countries and International Visegrad Fund. And second area that you highlighted was education sector that could play an important role, but should be taken in a very rational and sensitive way. So thank you for opening these 2 issues. And without any other ado, let me move to another speaker, another panelist, Mr. Alexander Duleba. He is the director of Research Center of Slovak Foreign Policy Association, graduate from the Kiev State University and postgraduate from the Comenius University in Bratislava. He is a dedicated researcher, in particular on the East European studies, Ukraine and CIS countries. He participated in more than 20 research projects. He is author of dozens of studies, books, publications. Although Sasha is recognized as a brilliant analyst and a researcher, he promised me today that he will avoid the temptation to analyze, and he will more focus on his personal experiences. And there is a reason for that, because Sasha and his research center is a partner of SlovakAid for many years. Since 2004, they are working in Western Balkan, in Moldova, and mostly in Ukraine, leaving a visible mark in these countries, I should say. With his team, Sasha developed one of the flagships of SlovakAid, the unique program called National Convent. National Convent was mentioned here several times in the morning session, and I think our previous two panelists know about it as well. I think that's the point where we could start. And Sasha, I have the same question actually what I put to Olga. Since 2004, being almost 10 years in Ukraine, how do you assess the development of this program? Where we were in 2004, where we are now, and what to do next? Sasha, you have the floor.
First of all, thank you very much for kind presentation. Thank you, organizers, for inviting me and for giving me this excellent opportunity just to share with you some of my observations when it comes to the Slovak ODA, and especially when it comes to the Project National Convention. Let us use this convention on the European Union. I will start from this. I will not analyze the scenarios for the Vilnius summit. All of you are invited. Next week we are hosting here in this very same place, the conference on what will be with Eastern Partnership beyond the Vilnius summit, what to expect from the Vilnius summit, what are scenarios for the developments afterwards. So I will avoid this. Let me just elaborate briefly on the National Convention, really, because I was listening with a great satisfaction today during the first panel and even at this panel that the project was mentioning, and the great news, came from Serbia. I'm very happy that actually after a couple of years there is idea to re-establish by Serbians themselves the project, which means that it's something relevant. So let me elaborate a bit about the National Convention on EU, couple of ideas. Why it is, and what's the added value of this project, and what it means. First, it's a very nice name, National Convention on the European integration of the countries, which follows simply and refers to our own experience in Slovakia, when we understood during the 90s and even during the difficult times of the end of the 90s, that the European integration is simply the other side of the same coin, which is post-communist transformation. And simply you cannot separate domestic reforms, reform agenda, economic, political, institutional reforms, a part of the European integration process. And these lessons led us to even, to another idea. And I would say the National Convention is a dream. It is a dream, as one of the dreams which were born in Slovakia a decade ago, how to better organize public life in this country. And in 2003, actually, yes, it was my institution, but also in close contacts and consultations with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Office of the Government at that time, we invented this platform. And let me just elaborate why it is so unique and what is the added value of this platform. Why I said this was a dream? Because the dream is that if you have democracy, you have elections, and what is happening in between elections is a problem when it comes to the involvement of the civil society actors, NGOs, and the citizens into the decision-making process, policy-making process. And the idea was to have the platform which will facilitate permanent debate between the government and stakeholders, but not on very general issues, but following the structure of the sectoral and common policies of the European Union. Second lessons which we learned and which is embodied in this project is that during the accession process, we learned in Slovakia that farmers in eastern Slovakia are not interested in foreign policy of the European Union. Teachers in Banska Bystrica are not interested in, business, etc. And we learned that it is very important to structure the debate about the European Union, because ordinary citizens, if you will just come to the village in Slovakia, and we'll show you just the diagram of the EU institutions, simply people are getting, crazy. What is this about? It's impossible simply to absorb this information. But if you structure the information along the sectoral policies of the European Union, if people understand that the agricultural policy of the EU is relevant for their daily life, and if you create simply the platform so that the stakeholders from this very sector can be a part of the government, and if the government is listening to them, and then doing monitoring, and you simply the finding was excellent. Actually, 80% of the policy recommendations adopted by the working groups, but we had 11 working groups in Slovakia at 2003-2007 are accepted, are becoming policies of Slovakia. Then people simply their citizenship is something, is changing, evolving. I mean, the state is becoming their own state because they are part of the policy. So this is a dream of having a permanent sort of representative democracy with a strong participation of civil societies, structured along the more than 30 sectoral and common policies of the European Union. So the ideal scenario would be to have like more than 30 working groups working with the government, etc., on very important and relevant issues for people. So then the EU is, getting more understandable for people. And you can simply really improve the public understanding and so on. I'm very happy that actually, as Peter mentioned, yes, the first project we implemented, it was one of the first projects of the ODA. At that time, it was administered by the UNDP Trust Fund. It was in Ukraine, and the aim of the project was to strengthen public discourse on the EU and public education on EU. So it was like really about the public discourse and the capacity building of think tanks in Ukraine who simply were, dealing with the EU integration process. In 2010, when we launched the National Convention in Ukraine, in Moldova, and before in Serbia. Serbia was the first country when we launched the project in 2006. Then in Montenegro, today, in this, we are working in Montenegro since 2010. I'm very happy that the project is really successful and it got support also from the IPA, within the IPA program of the European Union, and we are trying to do our best in Ukraine and Moldova. First of all, I would like to express my thanks to Madam Minister for really excellent cooperation of the government of Moldova, because Moldova is one of the, I would say, that if I can compare, because actually we collected some experience, national experiences, how it's possible to work in which country. And I must say that really the Moldovan, because the main precondition for the successful implementation of the project is the willingness of the government. And it is there in Moldova, so thank you very much for that. So actually, we started from the public support, capacities buildings of the EU-oriented or EU or think tanks dealing with the EU affairs. But since 2010, as a part of this national convention, there's a very strong component of the technical assistance. Let me just mention that actually within 1 year, we are organizing at least 24, because we have 4 working groups, 6 times meeting. Each meeting is attended by Slovak experts on different sectoral policies, from agriculture, from other sectoral policies of the EU. So it's like 24 Slovak experts to Moldova, 24 experts to Ukraine, to other countries. So it's like 100 of experts if I also count on Montenegro and other countries. It's really not easy job. And here I was invited to share sort of experiences and also some lessons learned. And I would like to raise the issue because we actually have a biggest problem here in Slovakia than in the countries where we implement the projects. Because if we, as the NGO, want to invite relevant experts, so most of them work for the state institutions, because we want to have the people there in Moldova, in Ukraine, who are sitting in Brussels in the sectoral working groups from the European EU agencies. But can you imagine? Me as the director of the NGO is inviting simply the official representatives of the ministries, and it depends, on the willingness of their bosses, management. Okay, I will approve the travel or not to approve, and then we are trying to manage it, and it's like half of week we are just working just to communicating with the ministries. Please allow those experts go to Moldova, go to Ukraine. So one of the lessons learned, and it will be very helpful for us, and I think for other implementing institutions in Slovakia who work with the SlovakAid is if there would be some legal sort of arrangement that the experts from the state institutions, if they are invited to participate and, to spend 3 weeks in Moldova or in Ukraine, should have a special regime in order to avoid the situations as it often, happens that they have to apply for holidays. But it's really too big price to expect from people that they will spend their holidays sitting or working, in Moldova or in Ukraine. So that would be really good to somehow, legally rearrange so that the work and simply managing these technicals in Slovakia might work better. And this is the one point. Second point which I would like to raise is that the countries are different. As I said, it's really completely different, to work with the same project in Ukraine and in Moldova. And as a big achievement, I see the situation in Ukraine, because in Ukraine it's much more complicated the political process, bureaucratic culture, etc., all those procedures. It's not easy simply to manage participation of Ukrainian state representatives within the working groups, speaking, to representatives of NGOs. And thanks to the special know-how, I will not elaborate how we manage it. Actually, we managed to have representatives of relevant ministries of Ukrainian government, at the working groups of the National Convention on EU in Ukraine. If the EU is organizing there something, or other organizations, that as a maximum, representatives of Ministry of Foreign Affairs participate. But if you have the topic on agriculture, the capacities of Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs on agriculture is quite limited, but we have the experts, and the relevant people there from relevant ministries. But the second sort of lessons learned, I think I would say it's also addressed to the SlovakAid that simply we cannot expect with the same allocations to achieve the same outcomes. If you have a country of 50 million, almost like Ukraine is, and in Moldova or in Montenegro with the same allocations, so in the big country, the outcomes should be, modest, but still, it's possible to work. But if there would be any possibility just to adapt the budget allocations to even the needs of the projects, if they should be accepted. So this will be the second message. And finally, the partnerships are very important. This project can work only if the government is willing, is the first precondition. And the second, if you have relevant partners. If you do not have relevant partners, you cannot work. You can implement this type of project, and this is why Belarus, we cannot implement this project in Belarus because the basic preconditions simply are not met there for the project. And finally, I would like to also raise idea, for future sort of possible improvements. And I would like to thank you, the International Visegrad Fund here, and I have to mention it here because actually one is bilateral assistance to the Slovak Republic, and it's a great that the International Visegrad Fund actually launched quite significant Eastern Partnership program, and thanks to this program we can simply, expand our activities. In Ukraine, we managed to organize several sessions of the working groups in the Ukrainian regions, thanks to the support from the Visegrad Fund. This simply, brings me to the idea whether it will be possible to think within the V4, even referring or to working together with the Visegrad Fund, whether it will be possible simply to more, coordinate our development policies, because I can imagine that Slovakia's Polish, Hungarian, Czech experiences, are more or less similar. Maybe we have even specific capacities, and if we would work together in terms of the implementing organizations, but also in terms if the Visegrad governments would be able simply to coordinate the development policies, I think the outcomes would be even more visible and more important than we have right now. But okay, maybe this for the introduction, and I will be happy to respond on comments, questions, if there will be any.
thank you, Sasha, for introducing National Convent or Convention as a dream. I still think it's a very practical dream that will come true in many countries, so good luck with that. And let me move to another, and to the last panelist, to Mr. Lubomír Rehák, political director from Team MFA, who has long time diplomatic experiences. After graduating from the Moscow State Institute of International Relations, he was posted in Moscow, in Lisbon, in Minsk, Brussels, in Astana. Being a chargé d'affaires in Minsk, he represented the local EU presidency, and in 2011 he was appointed the ambassador in Kazakhstan. So his experience with Eastern Partnership is impossible to overlook. You have a luxury to wrap up what you heard, to comment, to add. But before going into this, I have a question for you that is a bit different from the previous, and I should say quite a difficult one. In the second panel, we were discussing Slovak aid in Africa, and we heard about the real poverty, about the real needs, about people suffering from hunger. That's not the case of our assistance in Eastern Partnership, for example. So the question is, what we are doing there? What would be your answer to those who are saying why we are simply not fully focused on LDC, on least developed countries? So what's the potential and what's the reason of this second leg of Slovak aid transformation experiences? You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you for being here with us. I hope that you are still not more exhausted as the topic in this late afternoon. And thanks to the panelists in this panel and previous panels for the praise of Slovak aid. We Slovaks are generally considered to be very modest and maybe shy. And we prefer to speak about problems, so let us underline the problems and not to tell that we in some areas are really good. So it's very encouraging from your part, and we need it in such a solemn situations like this conference to remember 10 years of passing from category of recipients of development aid to providers of it, to have this encouragement for the future as an idea what to do and how to develop this cooperation. Development assistance only to this category, because middle-income countries and Eastern Partnership countries are in this category. Also have their specific needs in development. They have to improve good governance, have to improve their economy, sustainability of the system, and a whole spectrum of issues, including rule of law, human rights, sectorial policies. So this is important from this point of view. Why Slovakia decided to be active in this geographical area, let's say? It's our neighborhood. This is first answer. We are interested, this is our national interest, to have good neighbors, developed neighbors, prosperous countries, and we have genuine and unique experience of our own transformation. And this is important to transfer it to the partners. Now, after Vilnius summit, 3 of them, Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia, we hope that will become soon associated countries of the EU, and the cooperation will go even deeper, and the needs of cooperation will be deeper. So. Another motivation of our involvement here is the sentiment of solidarity. It's also important to stress. We have been assisted by our friends in the past, and now we are morally obliged to continue in this and to share our experience with the others. For the country of dimension of Slovakia, we contribute quite significantly. And it's questionable if this percentage of PIB is small or big, but it's not only about direct grants or scholarships or these visible forms of development aid. Over 70% of our aid is going through. It's more than 40 million euros yearly is going through European development agencies, through other millions through other agencies like UN, various trust funds, and etc. So these are also our money provided for development of others, and. We have one privilege, that we are a honest broker in this. We have no hidden agenda in this assistance, which is felt also by other countries, which is very important for us. However, I'd like to stress that it's not only about resources, about the money, the assistance. The real added value of the SlovakAid are the dedicated people. I see many of them here, and we have good experts in public administration, as Sasha told, and we have really excellent people in non-governmental sector. And we have very good cooperation, as a model maybe of cooperation between the government and non-governmental sector, particularly in this official aid to abroad. Regarding the instruments, we have this classical grant scheme following published calls for proposals. For small projects, we have very effective tool, microgrants. It's our invention, because not always these big grants could be used, and it's a longer procedure. So for a really pointed activities, we decided to allow these small grants up to 5,000 euros, which is very good sum of money, and it, like Natalia said, that in Moldova, it's very visible. It's good. It gives visibility to the Slovak. It's very useful. For public administration, we have this instrument called CETIR, which is transfer of experience from transformation. We are also supporting volunteers, which was not said here, but it is also the case of Eastern Partnership countries, and providing scholarships, even knowing, as you said, that it brings to brain drain, and is not desirable development, of course. And I hope very much that students will come to the country when they will feel that they are needed for the country. This is important to know. In order to have better effectiveness on public spendings, we have to go to more projects of cooperation, of trilateral cooperation and multilateral cooperation. And we have an excellent instrument. I see Karla Vusterova, Director of International Visegrad Fund here, which is our fund. Another source of our money given to common fund, which is very useful and also very visible, particularly in Eastern Partnership countries. They are also very active in Belarus. and not only in Minsk, but also in regions, in universities, in small business, in local administration, and of course NGOs. Yes. Previous speakers have mentioned concrete examples of impact of SlovakAid in respective countries, being a national convention in Moldova, Ukraine, or these platforms for independent thinking in Belarus. Last week also Georgian Foreign Minister Maja Pandjikidze was in Bratislava, and she also praised the Slovak assistance. We promised to open an embassy in Tbilisi, which is another positive moment of this visit. But we have there many important projects in fields of environment, very acute problem of refugees and internally displaced persons, management of public finances, fight against corruption, public procurement system, and other very practical things where we were very good experts, and we can provide them. We understand that the reform process is vital for our partners, so we try to assist them in need. Our activities should be always tailor-made with strong local ownership on the side of recipients, and they should be sustainable. This is very important for the future, that they bring something. I can share with you my recent experience when I was ambassador in Astana. I was accredited in Kyrgyzstan, and I was there in southern Kyrgyzstan when I visited one of the projects of SlovakAid. Imagine village in southern Kyrgyzstan. There is a logo of SlovakAid on a very useful activity. They allowed local agricultures to continue producing a specific type of local rice, Uzgen rice, which was threatened by cheap importations mainly from China. Right. So it was really excellent. And another case there was the visit of Slovak experts on tropical medicine, led by Professor Krčmery there, who inspected the ways of treatment of children infected by HIV virus. It was very sensitive political issues in Kyrgyzstan. They asked the international community to come to check if local doctors are treating well the children, and it was excellent, and it was very well perceived by local administration, by media, by regular people there on the ground. And I must say that there I was really proud of being representative of the country that has so valuable people doing the aid. So here maybe I will stop for now. I don't want to sum up for now, but what is necessary is this positive evaluation of past 10 years. We learned, we are in the process of learning. We learned a lot. We spent a lot of public money on foreign aid, but we gained a lot of friends, and this is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Luba, very much also for bringing the notion of Central Asia to this discussion, because, of course, it's the panel about Eastern Partnership, but it would be fair to mention that SlovakAid was active also in this part of the world. And thank you for mentioning Georgia, because Georgia is one of our priority countries, and we didn't spend so much time on it, but there are several very successful projects there as well. Well, before giving the floor to the audience, I hope you will still have some energy for raising some questions for next about 15 minutes. Maybe before entering into this discussion, I have one question to our ladies in the panel, and that's something I have in mind when you were mentioning two different countries from the point of view of ODA, the Belarus and Moldova. and that is the EU policy more for more, famous one. And I wonder, I would like to hear your views on how, if it works, if from your point of view, if it is a right instrument in both two countries, because it has naturally different effects in Moldova and in Belarus. So I don't know if you, Madam Minister, could.
My answer is clearly yes, because we are a country that is benefiting from the more for more principle, and I think that this is one of the elements of relevance of the Eastern Partnership as policy towards the Eastern neighborhood, if this policy has to stay relevant for a country like mine, Republic of Moldova. So if you reform yourself more, if you put a bigger effort, if you display more commitment, then I think you deserve to be supported a little bit more individually on a differentiated basis. And I'm afraid we have reached the stage of implementation of Eastern Partnership when regional approach, or to put it more colloquially, one size fits all, is not working any longer. And I'm afraid after the Vilnius summit of Eastern Partnership, it would work even less. We cannot be more different, actually, as we are right now, 6 countries. Now we have drifted apart so much in the last couple of years after the Eastern Partnership was launched that it is very obvious indeed. So first of all, I think you should have, European Union rather, should have to differentiate at least between the countries from in the Eastern Partnership that obviously proclaim and are committed towards the European integration and choose European Union and as its model, and those countries that do not have this ambition. And if it is a sovereign choice of that country, or if the situation is for the moment like that, I think it's not exactly productive to apply the regional approach. I would advocate in favor of differentiating between the 3 countries of the Eastern Partnership who declare European integration as the overall objective as well. And it's, of course, Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia for the time being. We are different in terms of size. We are different in terms of commitment, in terms of calendar of our European integration. And some of us are more advanced, like Ukraine in association agreement and DCFTA. They have negotiated before the rest of us, initialed in March 2012, and hopefully would sign in Vilnius and start provisional implementation. Moldova would initial and would sign in 2014, but Moldova is the most advanced country in the visa liberalization process and track. And so differentiating between the countries and helping the countries fulfill the objective and ambitious is a very important element of Eastern Partnership as policy. And what Sasha has said about the conference you have next week on the Eastern Partnership development after Vilnius, I think it's a very relevant timing to think how it will develop from Vilnius summit to Riga summit in 2015. And I'm afraid that differentiation and more for more should be the guiding principles of the policy if it has to stay relevant and not redundant. And I'm speaking on behalf of my own country. And of course, what I would also advocate for, as I did already in my presentation, differentiation should always be applied to granting the European perspective to Eastern Partnership countries. If it would be the case before the Riga summit in 2015, then it will be very difficult to look for a meaningful feature of that summit in 2015. Most of us will be, the 3 countries will be in the implementation effort of the signed and ratified association agreements and DCFTA. So we will be in different stages, not only of implementation effort, but on the reforms in that well-secured and well-managed mobility, meaning facilitation and liberalization process. We will be at the different stages of sector cooperation with the European Union. And here I mean, of course, CSDP contribution and participation in the framework agreement together with the European Union in the same civilian and military crisis management operation led by EU in Europe and elsewhere. It will be the different state of cooperation in the field of energy, transportation, common aviation space, civilian preparedness, research and development framework program, and all that. And if you would not differentiate among the countries, assessing adequately and fairly the progress and giving the country their perspective, then I'm afraid we will actually think of doing it on our own and prioritizing the bilateral dimension of our relation with the European Union above anything else, because we know that it pays us well back and we know what we are doing, and the multilateral dimension of Eastern Partnership might stay relevant, but again, only if it brings added value to our already very deep ongoing reform process and integrating the country into the European Union. So my answer is definitely yes.
Well, there is a saying among representatives of the analytical community in Belarus on this principle that in the case of Belarus, it's nothing for nothing. Because it's indeed difficult to assess due to the complete lack of political will on the part of the government to move towards European integration. And Belarus only participates in the multilateral track of the Eastern Partnership, and the engagement is very limited. For example, on the question of visa facilitation and readmission, we haven't even reached that stage. Also, the invitation on behalf of the European Commission was extended to the Belarusian government almost 2 years ago to start the process of, to start the dialogue on this issue. But having said that, of course, I mean, that's on the principle. I can only repeat what I said before, that apart from the government, with the lack of political will, there is a society which is a European society with European aspirations, with willingness to introduce European standards and values in their country. And that's something that should not be forgotten, and all opportunities should be used to bring more Europe to Belarus.
Thank you. And I turn to the audience, and we can collect some questions. I see one is there.
Thank you. Well, first of all, congratulations for the 10 years of anniversary of SlovakAid. I think it's great to hear all...
Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Haki Abazi. I represent the Rockefeller Brothers Fund for Western Balkans. I feel, in addition of saying the good words which we're hearing all the time here, I feel obliged to give a little bit of input on the Balkans issues, which I think Slovakia rightfully has given a lot of contribution and support to. But I think we need to be very realistic of trying to make the Balkans a model on many ways. I think with the frozen conflict between Macedonia and Greece on the name, with a full discrimination of rights for running for a public position in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the stalemate of development in the middle of Europe, not being able to challenge Dayton with a European constitution, with the problems of Kosovo and Serbia continuing, we're on a situation that actually a lot can be questioned about the foreign aid in that territory. And I'm not saying it would have been easy to be different, but I think sometimes we need to reflect on the issue of ownership, on how much we come with the concept of an imposed aid in order to keep stability as a notion which leaves in the margins the real development. And that brings me to the main point of when actually the region of the Balkans, and in this case also parts of the European Union itself, is going to be moving to development where we're talking for less unemployment, less needs for interventions, for financial stability of the financial systems like in Greece and so on. But I think even though we want to celebrate achievements, we have to be very, very careful to speak based on the needs and issues of the people on the ground rather than the frame and the issues that we want to portray a positive progress that has been made in the Balkans. I want the attention of the Slovak government and the Slovak people as friends of the Balkans that it's not all really positive. I think we do have a major blocking in there, as Slovakia has a major role to play, as every other part of the European Union members. And in addition to everything else, I think the experience of split of Czech Republic and Slovakia, it's a unique expertise and a unique process in the world that can come peacefully and cannot be blocking the political, economic, and social processes. And the reason I would say why Slovakia can offer that, and this is the question also for reflection from panelists, is stalemates usually provide a fertile ground for organized crime, corruption, which not necessarily remains only in the pockets, isolated pockets of society. They very often reach a high political class, which undermines the quality of democracy, undermines the efforts of civil society. So I think Slovak experience can play a major role on that too. Thanks.
I have a question, actually. My name's Thatcher Sharp from the American Embassy. I was just wondering about the panelists' perspectives on Russia's efforts to get the Eastern Partnership countries to join their customs union.
We have two questions. Okay, now it works. Move this one. So we have two questions. Who will start with answering? Madam Minister?
I can answer in Russian. And I will pass to Lubomir on Western Balkans. But
Okay.
it is not a secret. In our region, there is a competition of two integrationist models. It is the integration into the European Union that my country has made its sovereign choice, and there is a competing model of integrating that the Russian Federation is promoting in the part of the world I come from. And this is the idea of integrating into customs union and the so-called Eurasian Union, that, by the way, does not even exist. So it has to be said that obviously the efforts to ensure the European integration of Moldova are being, well, to some extent hampered by a very intrusive and very insisting policy of the Russian partners to advertise a competing integrationist model, because having the opportunity of absolutely free speech and free manifestation that the Moldovan society enjoys, the propagandistic effort in favor of Eurasian Union is going on quite freely, and I wouldn't say without some success. It is the opposition, political opposition party in the Republic of Moldova, that is the Communist Party of the Republic of Moldova, who has become in the meantime an ally of Eurasian integrationist model and is openly advertising in favor of that. So the majority of the Moldovan people and Moldovan society has actually voted 3 times in the last 3 years in favor of European integration, supporting during the general elections the coalition of the pro-European democratic parties. That was done because of the imperfection of some of our constitutional provisions, because we had to go to early elections, because we were not able to elect the president in the Moldovan parliament, and we are a parliamentary republic. But the fact stays as such. The people were always voting for the pro-European parties, and we enjoy quite a comfortable majority in the parliament nowadays, being the pro-European government in power in Moldova. But that actually makes the competition a little bit harder, because you have to know how to communicate to your own society and to your own people about what is it that you are doing on the European integration track. You have to be articulate, you have to be convincing, and you have to be honest, because I believe that the best strategy for communicating on European integration is the transparency of the act of governance in your own country. You don't have to hide the setbacks, you don't have to hide the difficulties, you have to be honest. And by the way, we have requested the support of the Slovak Republic on National Convention on European Integration, being motivated exactly by this objective. How did it work in Slovakia at the time of their accession to Euro-Atlantic structures? Who were the target groups? And then, of course, reflects the structure of the working groups that we have replicated in Moldova, because you have to be all-inclusive in this effort. And by the way, the similarity here is about the size of your resource. We are a very small public administration back in the Republic of Moldova. We're a small country, small public administration, very tiny ministries with just a number of persons in the leading positions who can effectively communicate. But you have to do the reform, you have to put this effort, then you have your own deadlines reporting and cooperating with the EU, but then you have to find time to communicate to your own society what is it that you are doing, so that they would be with you and support you, because without the society, this effort will never be sustainable. And this is exactly what we are aiming at. And I cannot say that we enjoy 100% support of that effort, exactly because of the competing model with huge resource invested into it from the other side. But I want to tell you that we have and we will prevail, because this is the model that the majority of people support. It is our sovereign choice, and in spite of all pressure, we will maintain this choice that our people have entrusted us with, and we do not look for any other models. European Union is the model that is appealing because it functions. And frankly speaking, Moldova is the country that has experience of an alternative model. We call it Soviet Union. We've been there before, we don't want to be there again. So that is also a motivation and a driving force for us. It makes the competition and the efforts a little bit more difficult, but then it gives you the sense of the mission. It's worth it. And if you succeed, then you will be probably even better awarded. But it's worth doing. That's how we feel about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Time is almost over. Lubo, 1 minute and try to be comprehensive.
Yes, I always try to be comprehensive. We definitely prefer local ownership to some imposed decisions from abroad, including the Western Balkans. The peoples in the Western Balkans, they have their future in their hands. And we are ready, of course, to assist them in everything, also in fight against organized crime and against corruption and other problems that are quite endemic in post-Soviet, let's say, space. On this example of split of Czechoslovakia, I must tell you that earlier we were more reluctant to show it as an example to Balkan countries, and we were approached by Montenegrin representation quite frequently to consult and so on. But then we were approached by Javier Solana when it was inevitable that it will come in order to really to show them and to try to explain how it was in our case, and it was very successful and peaceful separation or split of the country, and they continue to have good relations as we continue to have the good relation with our Czech brothers. So this is important for us. Thank you.
Sasha, but I would like to ask you for the same.
I mean, finally we came to the topic. But okay, let me be very brief, because actually it's not time, you do not have time to comment. I would like just to elaborate a bit on this Russia influence, and I completely understand arguments and what you said, Madam Minister. Yes, we have this example of Armenia. Armenia was recently one of the pioneers, and actually, when it comes to their capacities to manage tolls, everything. So it was excellent. Now we see that actually Armenia changed completely its attitude. Yes, there are political risks, because actually in your country there will be elections next year. Then we will have European elections. Then we will have new European Commission, and you can see actually Mr. Commissioner File was really dedicated to the issue, and really the Commission in today's sort of situation, and with the staff they are eager to have a success, and the Vilnius should be a success. This is crucial for the dynamics of the Eastern Partnership, for any dynamics of this in the future. Then we will have presidential elections in Ukraine, actually 2014 and even 15, when you mentioned Riga, will be full of political sort of questions which will raise, sort of questions, what will be the dynamics. So there are many political risks. Nevertheless, when it comes to Russia, I mean the position of Ukraine is very important, politically, for Moldova, for Georgia, for other, countries, and what is important also argument that actually is not only Ukraine, which is sort of, the objective of some special trade measures applied by Russia, but it's also Belarus. It's also Kazakhstan. It's not only Ukraine, or not maybe Moldova, maybe not in in a such level, but actually you can see that it's like Russia is applying those sort of measures against the member states of the customs union. And okay, so it's something, I think, more deeper problem with the Russian policies. It's yes, maybe it's a coincidence, partly it's a coincidence that it's really also like punishing, those who want to sign association agreement, but it's a bit a more deeper problem. Just to elaborate on that very briefly.
Thank you, Sasha. So this is the time when we could thank to our panelists, to Natalia German, to Olga Stužinskaya, to Sasha Duleba, and to Lubomir Rehak. I would like to thank you all for spending the whole day with us. I have two pieces of information I would like to share with you. First of all, the conference is not over. It will continue tomorrow morning, and the kickoff is in this room at 9:30. So you are welcome to join us tomorrow as well. And also this day is not over, and we would like to invite you for a glass of wine that is starting right now in Paludai Palace. That is about 50 meters walking distance from this room, and you are welcome there. So thank you very much for your time, for your interest, and see you tomorrow and today evening.